Hi, and welcome to Business Unusual. I'm Liz Whitehead, co-mastermind of Diversity Masterminds, and I'm here as always with Heather Cox.
I'm Heather Cox, the other co-mastermind of Diversity Masterminds.
And we're going to talk business unusual. What happens when business unusual becomes business as usual? And our guest today is Eric Coffie from Gov Con Giants. Hi, Eric.
Hey, how are you?
Awesome. We're so glad you're here. So we're going to get into it to business unusual. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about Gov Con Giants and what you do.
Gov Con Giants, actually, we just became a nonprofit 501c3 after 2 years of waiting.
Wow.
Oh my goodness, literally last month. So we're really excited for that. Prior to that, it really was just a name that I came up with, right? And when I decided to start my YouTube channel and my podcast, I quickly recognized as a government contractor that there was a need for putting out free content, right, accessible to everyone, where you didn't have to go sit in somebody's office and sign a form and put your name on an email list. And it's like, well, YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world. Why are we not putting this information out on free, publicly available, accessible channels that people use widely? And so for me, I just said to myself that the first opportunity that I had to do so, I would do it. And that's what I did starting in 2017. And so now, since that time, we've had close to 2 million views on our channel. We get about 50,000 views a month. And just, again, talking about government contracting, subcontracting rules, who should be talking to, who to call. We've had a whole bunch of guests. We've had 130 episodes for our podcast where we share and highlight the stories of successful contractors that started off as mom and pops, and now they've grown to 1,000+ employees. And so we're very happy to share all of that content for people free of charge, publicly available on the #2 search engine in the world, which is YouTube.
I know, I always forget that YouTube's also a search engine all the time. And actually, when I was at a conference in Seattle one time, one of the YouTube representatives was there, and she reminded us all. I think the whole audience was like, oh, right.
It's a search engine, right? Because how do we use YouTube? As a search,
what we want to find.
Right, we search what we're looking for. Like that's what people use it for, right? So that's what we all use it. We just don't think of it that way, in that manner.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you think is, like, I mean, like we do, as I said a while ago, Liz and I get a lot of questions about government contracting, and we ourselves have not taken advantage of all the different ways that we can, really leverage the government space out there, because we're very focused on the private sector, the corporate sector, but it's always good to diversify all your your offerings out there and who you're doing business with.
Right, absolutely.
And so it's something that's not always so easy though to figure out how especially with professional services, I find it's a little bit more tricky to figure out how you fit into some of these government contracting spaces.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you go about working with people or educating them on that?
For me personally, what I always tell people is, again, I always say start with the free content, right? Because I'm just an advocate. Again, I personally, whenever I have to fix a fan or a lamp or something, I go to YouTube, right? Like if you got to fix something in your house, don't we all use YouTube? Like that's what I do.
No, because my husband can't change a light bulb. He's very smart, not very handy.
Right.
So we call somebody.
So he calls somebody. Okay, well that's good. That's great. Your husband calls someone, but I go to YouTube. But so for me, what I always recommend is that. And then some of the things that I've done to help people along the way is I did write a couple books of resources, free resources that people can take advantage of, because I know that a lot of times, and again, I'm more of a reader than a video guy. So if you're like, well, this guy's got 800 videos, that's a lot to watch, right? That's like thousands, it's like binge watching for a year of content, right? But so I've actually written a couple books. One of it talks to you about different websites that the government uses. And again, it starts with helping to identify who's your customer, what your customer profile look like. And unfortunately, the government is a little bit convoluted, so they don't make this stuff easy to find or navigate. And so I did write a book. It's called The 72 Websites That You Need to Learn How to Grow Your Government Contracting Business. And so we start taking you through, okay, if you're at the market research phase, here are the websites that you should be using. If you're at the proposal writing phase, here are the websites that you should be looking at. If you're at the bidding phase, so it takes you through the different websites that you would not commonly find, such as, for example, usaspending.gov, which tells you where all the government agencies are buying services. FPDS, right, which again it's a market research website. Dynamic small business search, which is really weird, right? Just the name is like, who would Google? Because right, you don't even know what to Google. Like, why would I Google dynamic small business search? Like that makes no sense.
And some of these searches like that one I happen to know, not so
Okay.
user friendly for most people.
No. It's definitely not user friendly. I didn't say it was user friendly. I'm just telling you the information.
That was not part of the caveat.
I didn't say that was not a caveat that was user friendly. I just said this is where the information is. Well, let me respond to that really quickly because and early on when I was doing this and I started to become, I guess, known in the industry, right? And people started to know me. I had the audacity to ask someone at the DLA, I said, hey, your website is not exactly user friendly. And they ringed me a new one, right? They said to me, excuse me, our money is spent protecting you, serving the country, and providing defense, not making fancy websites. That was it. Like, that was their legit response. And so they were like, okay. I'm like, all right. Like, it serves its purpose. It's essentially, it's like, you want to take away money from, protecting our troops and securing our borders to make it a better looking website? It's like a trick question. I'm like, no. The website's
there's
fine.
so many ways I could go, but I'm gonna just.
But what? Yeah, I just.
It's one of those ways. I always talk about this when people ask me about like the SBA, like the WOSB certification and stuff. I'm like, in the terms of small business, the federal government has the best intentions, but sometimes when you get government involved with business, they butt heads. Like the incentives are all misaligned.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it doesn't really make sense. So
yes. And I would just caution anyone listening to this is if you are making that transition, you're coming into the government space. One, you've got to learn the alphabet soup, right? All the acronyms. That's first and foremost.
I think like
that's what everything,
world
right?
That we live in, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but more so in the government, because a lot of the times that you are dealing with people who are former military that are in these positions, and you could easily offend someone, right, by calling someone a colonel who's a general or an admiral, and then again, I don't even use those terms. I just say Mr. and Mrs. But if you want to be clever and you're like, oh yes, this colonel, I just stay away from all that. But the other thing is that when we always have to say, support the mission. And so I'm very cognizant of what we're doing supports the mission. All right. That's a little trick that I just tell people all the time. Just keep it in mind that you're supporting the mission. Right. And so when you think, like Liz said, some of the things don't necessarily make sense. They don't add up. They would not be the traditional way that we would typically do it. We just say, okay, we're supporting the mission. And if you keep that at top of mind, you'll have much better success, I would say, in this marketplace.
Yeah. I'm going to add it to because people will ask me questions. And I'm like, you have to suspend all logic.
Yes.
Just suspend your logic and support the mission.
And that's it. And you know what? That brightens people's day. Yeah. I'm telling you. This is the cheapest secret that you'll ever have. Like, this is, you don't need no grad school. This is like, someone gets upset and you're and you guys are combative, and just tell them, hey, look, whatever we can do to help support the mission, that's the proper procedure we want to take.
Love it.
I love that. Wow.
That's it. They're they don't say anything else. They're like,
what can you say to that? Okay, so what are some of your what's one of your top favorite success stories of people that you've had either on your podcast or that you worked with previously through your consulting that talks about, that they were able to use leverage their contracting with government opportunities?
I have a podcast guest that reached out to me probably maybe a week or so ago, and her name is Mary Korn. And it was interesting because she was on my podcast in 2019. So it's been about 3 years since we last spoke. Wow. And this is a success story in multiple ways. One is because she was at an event and she ran into someone, and she says within 5-10 minutes of the conversation, he brought my name up. So he was dropping my name, oh, I know Eric Coffie, right? Like he was using that to build his clout. And he didn't know that she actually knew me, right? But she could fact check. She was like, "Oh, I know Eric." She didn't say that, but in the back of her mind, she knew me. But nevertheless, it did trigger her to reach out to me, and we jumped on a call. And she thanked me for taking on this mission of helping to solve somewhat of the challenges of small businesses coming into the federal contracting arena. And she really, in the beginning of the conversation, she couldn't thank me enough because she says that she remembers when her company was first getting started and how difficult it was for her. And she does contact centers, just for context. And a lot of her contact centers, they employ disabled people, right? So physically challenged, mentally challenged, some of them are partially blind. So they employ disabled people in their contact centers, not for all, but a lot, like a huge percentage. And she remembers how difficult it was for her just coming into this arena and not having, the resources, the tools, the people to go to. And what she did, which most people can't do, is she actually stepped out of what she could afford to pay and paid someone to come on her team to actually teach her how to actually navigate this. And so she really gave me credit, and she thanked me for what I was doing because she said it was so necessary and so important. And at today, she has, depending on the month, anywhere between 600 to 1,000 employees. And so now she's currently graduated all of her small business NAICS codes by the SBA.
Wow.
So she's no longer a small business, and she's doing big revenue numbers. I don't know if she wants me to disclose it, but it's.
Were you the person she reached out to, Eric? Was it you?
No, I wasn't me. She did this. I think she's been in business 20 years ago. So this was 20 years ago. Okay. But she recognized that the things that we're teaching small business, the things that we're doing are the things that she needed at the time.
I see.
So she understands the value and importance of it, because one of the things that I don't think a lot of people know is that even though our federal government, the SBA in 2020 spent $247 million trying to train small businesses, right, through resource partners and grants and funding, the programs have been on a decline for 2 decades. The participation is down 30%. So whoever's getting the money, whoever they're doing, it's not working.
Right.
And so for me, I think part of the challenge was because they're not making this information publicly available and accessible. To me, that was just a simple solution. Like,
right.
The SBA can do way better content than I could ever do, right? Because they have all the resources, they got the people's experience. They just don't do it. And I'm not sure why they don't, right? And so for me,
they can always just hire you to do it for them.
Well, and that's what we're working on it. We're working on it. We're working on it, Heather. But that was a great success story. Hearing Mary Korn, how she now has up to 1,000 employees. She's graduated from small business. Now she's moving into the phase of large business status, right? Because she's no longer, and so she's looking for partnerships from smaller companies. She's looking for women-owned business partners. She's looking to actually go into the commercial space where she can help with supply diversity because she has the bandwidth, she has got the capital, she's got 20 years of experience, right? She has all those things. And so she just said that the federal government marketplace has essentially given her business everything that it needed to build and grow to where it's at today, because she was able to get longer term contracts that kept her from the ups and downs of cyclical parts of being in business. So that was a great success story from my podcast.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
And I can tell you another one from a small business side. That's a big business. Let me tell you another one. I had a student of mine, Rochelle, and she worked in construction, and she worked as like an AC technician, AC mechanic. You'll like this one because this goes right into your theme. And I remember Rochelle, she was working on her job, and she had been laid off from one company, and then she moved to another company. And then she said, because she had, I don't know, she had 4 kids, 5 kids. She had some, backstory behind her. And so she said, I don't want to be laid off again. So I'm going to start a business, right, while working at this job. So she went out, she incorporated, she started a business. She became women-owned certified. And so she told someone like in her company that she was working for that, hey, I'm a woman-owned certified business, and so then when that contract was coming up to an end and they wanted to lay her off again, the person who she had spoke to one of the senior executives and said, hey, Rochelle is a woman-owned business. And so they brought her into the office And so instead of firing her, they gave her a subcontract agreement to now work and support the company as a woman-owned business. And so that helped her because, again, she went from being an employee to being a business owner, and then helped the company to meet some of their diversity goals. And so since that time, that was about 2 years ago, I think she's done probably about $3 or $4 million in contracts, right?
Nice.
And where she was before a single mom trying to, working, relying on a job, an employer to pay her bills. And the best part was she didn't have all the money, but people stepped up to help her. And so she found a lot of support from the suppliers and from other contractors. She ended up hiring a project manager and a superintendent. And so people just stepped up to the plate to help her because she took that initiative. So that's a really good, feel-good story for me.
I love that.
We
That's
supported
fantastic.
her. We supported her.
I love that. And there's so many, I hear a lot about the pitfalls, but it's great to see that people, traverse those. I mean, there's so many companies, they like lose their 8A or their SBA and then they're like, oop, I graduated. Now what do I do? Or they hinder the growth of their business because they're like, well, I can't become like a cost center. I've got to stay under this level so I can get my government contracts, as opposed to being
as opposed to just say, hey, let's just keep growing and building our organization.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that's great. I love that story for sure.
No, I have a lot of stories. I mean, we've been very fortunate. Probably at this point, I think 6,000 people have gone through my free trainings. And probably we're close to 1,000 through my paid trainings right now, companies. So we've helped a lot of people. We have access to an incredible database of small businesses, veterans, women, minority, disenfranchised people. So we've really, like I said, we touch a lot of folks. I'm very excited for all the good work that we've done. The other thing that I found out that I just learned recently, which ties into your messaging, is that I was on the phone with a friend of mine that works at AWS.
Okay.
And he's now a buyer it's Amazon. He doesn't work at AWS, so he works on the Amazon side. But either way, he's a buyer for Amazon. And I noticed we haven't, we're friends from college, we go back to like middle school days, right? And so he's a buyer at AWS, but he did not, just for all intents, he did not treat me any different than he would any other consultant or someone calling and reaching out to him. So he didn't give me any special privileges or any inside information. But in listening to him, just because we you want to keep everybody honest, and you want somebody respect their ability and not like you didn't get an edge because you knew me or something to that effect. Does that make sense? Yeah. But nevertheless, the point was the things that he was describing to me in terms of what they were looking for, women, veteran, hub zone. I go, dude, you talk like the federal government, right? And he's a corporate buyer.
They do, of course.
He didn't know this, but he did not know this.
Oh, interesting.
So if you don't know both sides, I never talked to an Amazon because I've never done business with Amazon. But he was saying, hey, we put out an RFI. Hey, I'm like, RFI? So he speaks as a buyer, just like contracting officers for the government. Right.
It is similar, but Eric, let me ask you this question, because this is where I find the differences, and you tell me if I'm wrong, because you know better than me, possibly. That the perception out there, and my perception is that corporate America definitely looks more of the overall value, and the government tends to go right to the bottom line to choose.
No, it's definitely wrong.
Oh, that's great to hear that.
Yeah, I would say that they go to the bottom line when it comes to one is like really easy transactions, right? Simplified transactions that are like low cost, right? Low, they're not complicated. They're things that they buy on a daily basis.
Like pencils,
right? Then they go to
pencils. What's the bottom line of pencils?
Right. But when you start getting to more complex solution oriented things, they definitely are looking at value first.
Oh, that's great.
Okay. The other thing is, let me just distinguish this. I teach federal procurement. So when people say government, they assume like everything is government. I don't deal with state or local. So I just teach federal procurement only because, well, one is, you're right. If you were looking at local, they go straight to the bottom line. All local government, I've never seen them not go straight to the bottom line. And so that hurts all of us. That hurts the taxpayers. It hurts the small businesses. It even hurts the company who wins the contract because they can't make enough money to survive. And so they end up going out of business. So it just hurts everyone. So I typically, I try to discourage my students from doing those contracts. But again, they exist out there. But yeah, I specifically, when I'm answering a question, just for clarification to somebody listening, I'm talking about the federal.
Yeah.
Right. No, that makes sense. But I'm so happy to hear that for you to extinguish that myth out there, because that's always been my like what clients have told me, what I've experienced. And again, I have done a whole lot of looking out there. So like once I heard that, I was like, get them. I never want to be the cheapest option ever. So I'm never gonna do whatever,
No. I mean, if you think about it, that myth is huge, because if you look at all the companies that are all those corporate people service the government.
Yeah, but corporation has the ability to like then charge us more as consumers so they can make up for the government thing. I don't know if we have that same ability.
You haven't read any of the articles where it says how Boeing and this guys, Microsoft was fighting with Amazon over their cloud services contract, and they sued the government because they made a poor decision. They weren't fighting over it because it wasn't profit in the job. They weren't fighting over this $10 billion contract so they could back charge us consumers. SpaceX, their whole survival came off of government contracts. Like they were going to go under before Obama gave them a contract to keep their existence alive. So some people say that actually SpaceX was subsidized by the government. I tend to disagree with that, but it's not a far stretch.
Right. I hear.
Right. Because they were basically, they were imploding. They couldn't get any more investor dollars, and no one else was buying rockets that were flying up to space.
You didn't buy one?
I did not get my order in time.
I don't know, kids' tuition, rocket. I was like, I'm so torn.
But I will say that sometimes, like in the case of SpaceX, and again, I mean, that's just, I only use that because that's something that we all know. Right. They did create some artificial barriers to not promote competition. And so you can read that if you read the book, but essentially, they had created barriers that if you had never flown a rocket to space successfully, that you couldn't, win that contract. Right. And so that means that basically any innovation out in the world. Right, exactly. So, I mean, but that's at the highest levels.
Right. So where can people find this book? Can we put a link on it on our thing for we put an affiliate link on it on our website? Like we want to make sure, there we go. We want to make sure everybody can get those. So you are a wealth of knowledge, Eric, which is why I stopped you to get you on here.
Yeah. So, I mean, Building on Playbook, this is the one that, again, I mean, it's very thin, but really, because I'm not here to write all the website information from the website. I'm just, because that would make zero sense. Right. But the way that we've organized it is essentially, hey, look, this is where I'm at, right? Which website should I be looking up? Because how do you know what to Google? Like, if you don't even know what to Google, you can't even type it in, right? Like you just type it. So, and as we all know nowadays, with our Google searches, they're tailored to us, right? So not really to give you what information, they're tailored to your opinions and your beliefs and things like that, as opposed to just give me the information.
Give me the information I want, man. I
know. So all my books are on Amazon. And GovCon Launch, essentially that book, that's my story. So the other one, I didn't tell my story. I just tell you, hey, look, these are websites to go to. I think it's like $10. And then my other one is my story, but also I talk through more of what does it take to launch a government contracting business. So what does that take from start to finish? And what I did. And then I give examples of things that I did using the sites, the places, the documents that I use. And I show you how you could replicate that same journey and path. So believe it or not, my YouTube channel is the best place I send people to, because we have nearly 800 videos now on YouTube. And I've had so many students that told me that they were able to win their first contract just watching my YouTube videos.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
So I've been I'm very, very excited because like I said, we really believe that, I mean, probably 10 years ago, when I myself was a government contractor. So my background, I did construction contracts. And when the market crashed in 2007, 2008, then there was no EDL, there was no PPP. Right. The only people that got bailed out was Wall Street. Everybody remembers that, right? Yeah. So we all suffered and we all lost. Well, at the time, I was a construction guy that was turned developer with nothing to build, nothing to construct. And so someone brought up to me, hey, try this, the government contracting thing. And I was in my 20s and they said, there's billions of dollars. I'd never heard of billions of dollars before. And I was like, billions? I was like, I was like, me? I was like, I got to look into this. And so I looked into it. And I saw so much suffering at that time from business owners. Because again, I've always been in business. I've always dealt with business owners. And I just saw so much suffering from the businesses because, again, there was no bailout. So people literally lose their houses, right? They're losing their cars. They're getting repossessed, their boats, everything. And I said to myself, if all of these smart people knew about the government, they wouldn't be losing their house. Like, you understand, they wouldn't have to move in with their mother-in-laws. And I mean, I knew these guys that lived in $1 million houses moving in their in-laws. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I know how embarrassing that must feel as a man with a wife and kids and a family to take care of, to have to like, hey, honey, can we go move in with your mom? So I just, that honestly is what drove me to start making this content and sharing with the world, just because I said, I don't think that we lack the highly qualified or skilled businesses out there to support the government. I just think we lack.
They don't know about it.
Right. They don't know about it. We lack a clear path, a dissemination of information for them, how they can do this. Right. And so I think sometimes it's intentional, to be honest with you. I like going back to what Liz said. I think when you're trying to mix some government people with some like common sense stuff, like I've always said, I vote for a department of common sense.
Right. Yeah. So dispel logic.
Awesome.
Support the mission.
We need a department of common sense.
Make a t-shirt.
At the government, right? Just give us a department of common sense, because I built bathrooms in buildings that we then tore the building down the next week.
No.
And we knew it.
Oh my God.
And the government knew it. So the Department of Common Sense would have inserted themselves and said, we're not building this bathroom. This building is going to be demolished in a week. Why are we putting up a $60,000 bathroom?
Right.
Yeah. Well,
why are we going to do underground construction on a road after we just paved that road? Why would we not do the underground construction first and then pave the road afterwards? And you know what the answer is? A lot of times the funding for the pipes in the ground came after the funding for the pavement.
Yeah.
So the pavement funding came, let's say in 2021, we paved the roads. The funding for the piping came in 2022. So now we have to tear that newly paved road up to put the pipes on the ground, because the funding came in the order of the funding, not in order of logic or common sense.
Oh my gosh. Okay, wait. So Eric, are we going to see you at VIB? Are we going to see any of the conferences this year again?
I'm going to be at VIB. I'm actually going to be in Atlanta next week.
I'll be there. We'll both be there.
So we'll see you there. Yeah, that was actually, and by the way, we need to further the conversation, because one of the areas that I'd like to get into is the supply diversity side, just because I really do believe I can help some of my successful contractors start to position themselves for the supply diversity to be able to service those Fortune 100 companies.
Yeah, that is our expertise for sure. So
so we could definitely chat about that. And I'm probably going to have my own event as well after, so I'll let you know.
Yeah, keep us posted. Look like big things for you. I know. And how's your son?
My son is wonderful. He's learning a lot. I'm having him taking a Google SEO class right now.
Nice.
So he's doing that to help us to improve all of our analytics, to improve our websites with the data upload times, download times. We just want to be better. One of the things that I've read is, if you have a message, it's your obligation and duty to get out there if you've got a message to spread. And so we just want, a lot of times, unfortunately, and this is another problem that we have in the government, there's a lot of charlatans and people that are taking advantage of small businesses. And unfortunately, by the time I see them and like people like you see them, they've already, been taken. And so one of the missions that I've challenged my whole entire team with is, hey, we've got to, even though we have a lot of content, we still have to get better in terms of people finding us by search, finding us our blog, just overall website, just because we have to combat all of the people who, they just spend millions of dollars in that stuff to take advantage of us small businesses. And so we've got to fight against those guys, and we've got to compete against them, making sure that we get to the small business first and give them the real information. The factual information, so that they can make, the decisions. Because when you're starting out, you don't have a lot of resources. And so if you spend a couple $1,000s with this person, you can't go off and say, okay, well, that didn't work. Let me go spend a couple $1,000 with this next person, right? As well. And so when you have operating from limited resources, it can be a challenge. And we just hear that from time to time from small businesses. Well, this guy, he signed me up for this program. It was $10,000, $5,000, and they didn't do anything for me. And so we just want to fight that. And so we're trying to get better all the way around the board. in terms of our delivery, our messaging, our positioning, so that we can help solve some of these challenges and give people free information from practitioners, not theorists.
Love it.
Awesome. So much good information.
Thank you, Eric. All my stalking was worth it to get you here.
Yes.
Thank you. I've had a lot of experience.
Yeah, we're going to link your books and your YouTube channel in the notes.
Excellent.
But thanks so much for being here. This was awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me. It's a lot of fun, and I'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.
All right, good stuff.
Bye.
All right, talk to you.
Thank you.
Bye.